Vamos a ver ahorita un poco lo que es también el tema de la partida, un poco táctica de partida y revisar un poco qué fue lo que pasó y cómo evitar problemas como lo que pasó ayer y en general cómo hay que pararse con el timing correcto para poder partir. Ok, bueno, lo dejo con David para que empecemos ya a ver este tema. Cualquier cosa, preguntan, por favor.
I'm standing by that light. Ah. Okay. I had a good night's sleep. Thank you, Mattia. Where are you? Thank you. So a couple things we'll talk about this morning before we head out sailing. One, I wanted to talk about that incident that happened yesterday at the start of the first race. Then, yeah.
Can you slow the youth there right now?
Yeah. So,
Are you going to use the projector?
pardon me?
Are you going to use the projector? No, you have to turn it off. Because the thing is
Oh, yeah. We could turn it off for a little bit. Then I can move that over. You watch Shite? And the star or the laser?
Well, I couldn't find the specific star factor, you know. I saw the 12-minute rubber shite laces.
Yeah.
It was great.
You see how
The pop, boom, boom. That would be like almost. It was better to ease than trim because they easily do the flop.
Yeah, that's right. And I talked to him at the Pan American Games in Brazil because I wrote that or I saw that and I talked to him, and then I don't remember if he did it before or after, but he was explaining that to a group of people, and I said, but aren't you losing a lot of the wind flowing off the leech? And he said, no, that it's almost like pumping or rocking, but you're not pumping or rocking. It's doing it for you.
Yeah, it was great. Also, one thing that I can compare that maybe in the snipe that I just found out is when you have wind like this, let's say yesterday, and then you want to start, and you have bang on, the boat responds differently when you don't have any bang on, especially when you're trying to throw the bow up and then get some speed. So sometimes it's better to not have any bang off, and just the boat will completely respond quicker,
Right.
and then it's easier to bear down and get some speed than when you have bang. That's just an observation.
And I mean, if it's blowing 14 or 15 knots, the more wind you need vang. You have to put vang on. But out here today or yesterday, in 10, 11, 12 or less, it's better to err on too little than too much. So this morning I was going to talk a little bit about that start yesterday. That there was we were almost the whole fleet was involved. So if you weren't involved, I'm just going to talk a little bit about that, and then I thought I would talk about how I approach a start, and then a couple other things, and then we'll ask questions and interact. Many times when there's an incident like yesterday where all of a sudden one boat tacks and that causes a chain reaction, as it did, you could trace back the real issue back 30 or 40 seconds before the incident actually happens. And from where I was watching it on a powerboat, and I'm not picking on Juan Santos. He's an amazing sailor. So is Juan in here? No. But it happened to be him, so it's easier to say his name than say some boat. So at maybe 1 minute to the start, Juan was down here on starboard tack, And he realized that 1 minute he could, so a good minute before the start, he realized that he could not lay the committee boat. And there was boats up in this area, even back here. So he did the right thing. At maybe 50 seconds or 45 seconds to the start, Juan tacked to port, and then maybe at 30 seconds, tacked back to starboard. So that was good. But what he didn't do is even that step up, he still wasn't able to make the boat. And my guess is that even at 10 seconds, he probably realized, maybe realized that he wasn't going to make it. And in hindsight, which none of us have ever been wrong in hindsight, he probably should have done that. But he tacked and didn't have enough time to tack back. And you know what happened to the rest. If you go back to this down in here, I watched when Juan tacked back to starboard, and he didn't have to tack back to starboard when he did. In other words, there was no one here yet forcing him to tack back to starboard. He could have sailed longer on port until he was forced to tack. So to me, that was where the mistake was really made, back here. So the lesson learned for us is, if you're in a position that you're trying to win the pin end of the starting line, and nobody's forcing you to tack early, and there's no one behind you that's going to cause to start to lure of you, you want to come up the line all the way to your competitors before you tack to port. That gives you the room down here that you'll need to start. Juan tacked to starboard without being forced to, and I think that caused a lot of the problem.
I think you're right, but at the same time, I was the lure of Juan, and I was trying to get lure of him, to try to get the pin. So maybe we rushed because of that. Because I was trying to get rid of him, and he started hitting down, so I could not get there. Once we realized it was, maybe he should have just hit up. I would have gone inside. Maybe I wasn't one that would have got stuck instead of him, because I was fighting for it. Maybe at that time, what I saw is maybe not pushing too hard. When you're racing with 40 boats, somebody's going to push you. Especially when you would do. And you don't want to be the one that when you want to start bear down, you're going to not make.
Well, and if that's the case, we have a racer, the
consideration that at least we had a lot of current going from the wrong side.
But the current's going that way.
The same as the way, basically. More to the north.
More like that.
Again, it's the starting line.
Like current's going this way.
Yeah.
I don't think it was one round. I don't think it was that much.
Pero sí, o sea, generalmente siempre hay.
You want that?
Thank you. I don't know what I did with. I had it last night, but Juan is here, so I gotta. I saw it. Where are you, Juan? No, he was just here. Oh, he's outside. There he is. He's getting something to eat. But to be sure, Eduardo, to your point, to be sure on if you want to start at the pin end, like there you are, Juan, like Juan was, with current or without current, if you want to start and win the pin, you need to know your lay line. Again, for the youth sailors, you need to know your lay lines to the start. And you learn that pre-start at 10 minutes or 15 minutes. You practice knowing your lay lines to the starting line. So if you're sitting here at 30 seconds to the start, and a boat comes from down here and does that, maybe like you did, Eduardo. Pardon me, close. Then you know you don't need to bear off to protect your hole. You could just stay here because you're confident, because you've done your homework, that you are on the lay line. Because if you bear off to try to protect, you're both going to be in trouble, which is what happened. In the second race, there were two boats more barging, and a boat came from here, and these two boats smartly both tacked out because they couldn't get in there. And again, knowing your lay lines is very important. So the pin end start is a very high risk move. Usually if the pin end's favored or you want to go left and there's 5 boats at the pin end fighting for position, usually maybe one boat out of those 5 make it. The other 4 either are in bad air, they have to tack to clear, and when they tack to port, then you got to duck and tack back, and we've all been there. So that's a very high risk. And because it's so high risk, you must know where your lay lines are. If there's a half knot of current, you have to factor that into your lay line. My opinion, my advice on a starting line like yesterday, it was very long for 12 boats. Plenty of room to start with clean air, going fast anywhere. The line was pretty square. The third race that I sailed, I thought the line was pretty square. So there's no reason to have to go fight for that space at the pin. If Juan or if Julio or whoever wants the pin, and I see that, I say to myself, I'll just start up the line a little bit. You know, it's not worth fighting for that space. So, from watching the races yesterday, I thought people, despite what happened in the first race, people started well, spread out. And I was just going to talk a little bit about my theory on starting, whether there's 12 boats or next year at the Worlds when there's 60 boats. And I always start what's called a port tack approach all the time. Every start, that's what I do. And what that means is, depending on the amount of wind, so depending on how fast you're going, your final entry into the starting line is always on port tack. And depending on where you want to start, will dictate where your boat is near when you're below the pin or in this area at what time. So if you want to start at the boat and it's blowing 10 knots, then you know the distance of the line and how long it'll take you to get there. So let's say the line is 20 seconds long or 30 seconds long, and you want to start here. So maybe at 1:30, 1 minute and 30 seconds, or 1 minute and 45 seconds, you're coming down and you're looking for your position to start relative to all the boats. Maybe at 1 minute, there's a lot of boats right here, luffing. So you have a decision. Do you want to tack underneath them, or do you want to go in here, past them? If you want to start at the boat and you see 10 or 15 boats luffing at 1 minute right here, you might say, the wind's in right-hand mode, right-hand phase. I'm going to start here. And then there's probably more boats here. So you're going to, if the line's square, meaning that it's a square starting line, you might be here instead of 1 minute and 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute and 10 seconds. And here's this big group of boats, you might want to tack in here. If your name is Juan Santos and the pin's favored, you might want to be in here at 50 seconds. If the pin's favored, there's going to be the group of boats here. And if you're starting at the pin end, below the pack, you must know this ley line. That is critical. Before the start, at 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, as I said, you want to practice going upwind at where you need to be to know that ley line. So when you're tacking in underneath everyone at the pin end, you're confident of where you are. Otherwise, it's not going to work. If you're very good at doing this maneuver and you're confident in this maneuver, then there's big rewards for pulling it off. My point is, for starting, I always do this, the port tack approach, as opposed to being at 1 minute or 1 minute 30 or 1 minute 45 on starboard tack, just luffing. Here, here, or here, just luffing. You're like a sitting duck. You have no options. If you're doing a starboard tack approach, you have very few options, and if the wind shifts or the picture changes and you're on starboard tack, that's where you're going to be. If you're on port tack coming back up on the line, you have the picture changes, the boats aren't setting up where you thought they might set up, you can change your strategy. So that's what I always do, and it seems to work well for me.
Yes. When you tack for the starboard tack, how many seconds before the start? You don't come with the port tack, and you have to start sometime. Normally, how long?
I would say normally if you're tacking in at 1 minute, anywhere at 1 minute, you're thinking, boy, we have a lot of time to luff here. Too much time. So usually, again, depending on how much wind, the windier it is, the later you can tack in. If it's blowing 20 knots, you could tack in. No, I said that wrong. The windier it is, the earlier you could tack in. You could tack in at 1 minute, because at 1 minute, if it's blowing 20 knots, everyone's spread out more and you can control yourself. If it's blowing 10 knots like here, I would say tacking in at 40 seconds. 40 seconds is enough time to you can translate it in your mind how long it's going to take you to get places and fend off other boats. 1 minute is you're hoping, like you're where 1 minute and someone sails into leeward and tacks, you're toast. You're in trouble. So port tack approach. And I would say in generally speaking, on a day like yesterday with a square starting line, thanks. Let's see if this, it works, but just, we did it yesterday on our boat where we were coming on port tack at 40 or 50 seconds, and there was one little group of boats, and I looked and I thought, nah, they're too early. So we passed them, and we went to the next group, and we tacked. And we started about in the middle of the course. The pin end was a little bit favored, so they got off, but it was a safe place to start, just safe. So in conclusion on yesterday's first start and on starting in general terms, you know, my wife is a very good sailor, and she beats me more than I beat her. And she always, so we were at the Southern Circuit in March, and she wasn't there. And I had an incident. This is not a starting incident, but it's an incident we all see a lot. It's an incident that will happen here, I guess, a lot at the World Championship because the left is favored a lot. So this is the weather mark offset, and this is a ley line. Okay? And what happened at the Southern Circuit is it was blowing 15 knots. I was coming in on the port, just below the port ley line, going fast. And there were boats overstood on the starboard. Boats, lots of boats. And I'm coming in on port. And as I approached, they were almost beam reaching or broad reaching. So overstood. You know, that's close hauled. They're coming in this way. You see? And I tacked in there. And they, what? It's going to happen out here a lot because the pin end, the left side generally is favored, and a lot of boats will come from the left side. So this is going to happen a lot in Salinas. Yes. And I don't want to get too wrapped up with the rule, but I'll tell you why I'm mentioning this. So I was on port tack. I tacked in there. The starboard tacker, as long as they come up and not past close hauled, if they come from a broad reach to a beam reach, not past close hauled, and you complete your tack, you did not follow them. Yes?
Yeah, can I share experience real quick?
Sure.
Real quick. At a South American Championship that happened, and I was the guy on board. And luckily I wasn't disqualified, but the reason was I tacked, and as soon as I tacked, he was cleared, but if he headed down, he could have hit me. So he did. So after 5 seconds of me tacking and being clear, he headed down and hit me. Of course, we went to a protest, he protested me, and not protest because he was cleared. But they told me that maybe there's different judges, different reasons for media, protest, whatever. But if a person comes in starboard and if they're going straight to the mark, and a person comes in, inside of the 3-point circle and they tag, this person cannot. If that person on starboard drives just a little off the mark, that's what they told me. That you're infringing the rule. You're making a foul right there. If he has to, even because he's going to the mark, if he has to hit up just a little bit to avoid you, then there's a foul.
Even though you're finished. That's not what the rule says.
Yeah. I'm just fresh. Yeah. And so what happened is with this incident in Miami, I took a penalty because I didn't want to go through a protest. I just took a scoring penalty because I could take a 10% penalty. I had won the race, and I just said, this person was a friend, and I said, for 10%, 7 points, I'll take the penalty. However, I went in, I asked the jury, can we go through it off the record, not for real? Sure, they said. And what I was told, and you're right, depending on the jury member, this person might see it one way, this person sees the next. The port tack boat is always guilty until proven innocent. It just shouldn't be like that, but that's the way it is. And remember, this is the ley line, and the boat's coming in this direction, not this direction. So they're coming in overstood. Like in your situation, you tacked, he kept going and hit you. After you tacked, if you completed your tack, and then 5 seconds later, he kept coming at you like a missile and hit you, right? As I understand the rule, if he comes in you, if he heads up to avoid hitting you after you've tacked, and he does not sail past close hauled, if he goes from a broad reach to a beam reach, not his jib, his sails do not luff, he doesn't go past close hauled, you did not follow him. If you tack in here and he's got to go past head to wind to avoid collision, you followed him. And much of it it's in a jury, so even if you're 100% right, you only have a 50% chance of winning.
So, yeah, of course, you got all the rules, but one of the jury guys, after we're talking, they told me, the way, if you're going to be this overtime and you want to be the main guy that doesn't let anybody in, you want, when you're ready to the mark, and as soon as you report, that's what he told me, to protect yourself from that happening, prevent that from happening, is that when you point into the mark, and as soon as he's about to attack, you go into the mark, you're going to hit him, and as soon as you start report, you're going to have to hit up. And if you have to hit up just a little bit, as he told me, there's no way they're going to lose the focus. Because that's what he told me. And if you make contact, even worse, because you're a starboard, it's even worse. You don't want to be
So the reason I brought this incident up wasn't so much to talk about that rule, but I know here it will happen a lot because of where we're sailing. So to go back to the beginning, this happened to me, so I called my wife. That's what we do. We call our wives, help! And I said to Jody, I said, let me explain to you what's happening and tell me what you think. So I explained what I just did now. And she says, smart, she says, go back 1 minute earlier. Tell me what was happening. What were you doing 1 or 2 minutes earlier? Oh, well, no problem. I was on starboard tack, and there was boats coming. No, 1 minute earlier. So I was on starboard tack, and boats are coming here and going there. And she said, were you lifted or headed when you were 1 or 2 minutes away? Well, I thought we were even. And a boat came, and I waved them through. Go. And we just kept going. Here's the ley line. And then another boat came. And I thought we were even or lifted a little bit. So I said, go. So that guy went. And next thing I know, I'm on the ley line. Got a tack. So she said, that's where you made a mistake, not here. You had plenty of chances when you were 1 minute away to tack to port, go up and tack. Here, anywhere. You could have tacked, gone up to the ley line, and tacked back. The moral is try not to risk it. We were in good position. We were in the top 5, so there's not a lot of traffic. And maybe if we were in 25th or 30th, you could push it. You could take more risk. So the moral there is, and she's right. There's plenty of times, kind of like Juan yesterday, at 1 minute to the start. He could have made different decisions that would have changed the outcome of that start. And same thing here. So try to think ahead. I do that now more than I used to. Try to think ahead, always 1 or 2 minutes away. Where do we want the boat to be in 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes from now? That would be what I would call your strategy. Before the start of the race, you thought, how do we want to approach this mark in 10 minutes when we're there? That's the strategy. That's long term. The tactics are boat to boat. Those are tactics. And that will help you, your strategy before the start. So today, when you're starting, Tia, okay, guys, where do we want to come into this weather mark? Well, Carlos said that at the top end of the mark of this leg, sometimes there's a nice lefty right at the top end. So let's play the middle left, and when we get up toward the mark, let's not be on the ley line, but let's come in from the left side. Okay, that's our strategy. So to implement that with your tactics, that's when it's easier to make tactical decisions because you made an overall big plan. So that's why I mentioned that incident. But you're right that different jury, that's why going into the jury is, you never know. It's a 50-50 chance. So you want to stay out of the protest room. Plus, it makes dinner late. So I think at this time, because I think it's better to have conversation rather than me just talk. Is there anything? Yes.
I have to do something like half an hour after we have to win the race. So we can talk about that, attacking and not on the mark, we were marked because I have a video of something that we can relate.
Okay.
Okay, so after that we can talk about that.
Okay. So right now it's 10 to 12. What time how much more time in here do we want to talk? We have time. What time do you want to head out? 1 o'clock? Okay. So I think right now, if anyone has, especially the juniors, especially the girls, because they're so loud, they're talking so much back there. If you have any questions on whether this or anything, maybe talk about you tuned your boat and it was tuned for medium, 10 knots, and then all of a sudden it's getting windy. If you talk about how, I know the juniors aren't going to change their rig tune, but to talk about, I thought what would make sense, Juan, is if we go, when we leave here, if we all go to one boat just for 10 minutes, I could just do a couple things so you can see it. Yeah, I want to do that, especially for the youth sailors.
Yeah. Hey, how do you maybe it's a big question, but how do you set your mindset as for the strategics before starting line? How do you go? How to think about it?
So the question is, how do you before the start of the race? How do you set your mindset on the strategy, the overall strategy? And I mentioned this yesterday, and I encourage you to do it today. I'm a big numbers person, collecting data before the race. So I like to go out, go to the committee boat, check in, go upwind, and start collecting data to formalize a strategy. So we go upwind on starboard, get a number, port, get a number, head to wind, okay? Keep going upwind, do it again, head to wind, bear off, put up the spinnaker, back downwind. Get back downwind, spinnaker down, head to wind. So just collecting data. Maybe do it a couple other times. Look at other boats who are far upwind at their angles, and then we start our dialogue. What's the wind doing? Well, it's oscillating. Looks like there's more wind on the edges. Looks like there's better wind to the right. So we keep dialogue amongst the three of us. And then maybe 10 minutes before the start, we'll say, well, what do we want to do? What do we want to do this race? Where do we want to go? Oh, I don't know. The wind seems like it's going right. It's oscillating, but it's going slowly going right, but there's still a lot of oscillations. It's not a persistent shift, it's an oscillating. Okay. What end's favored? Line square. Okay. Let's check again. Let's go upwind again just for 1 minute. Okay. Still, we had head to wind at 230, 240, 235, 240, 245, 240, 245, 250, 245. Oscillating, but little shifting to the right. Okay, 5-minute gun goes. Okay, here's our strategy. I think based on the information we've collected here, I think we have to be cognizant of the right, but there's enough shifts that let's go middle right. That's going to be our game plan. Hopefully it works. And, okay, middle right's the game plan. Where do you guys want to start? Well, the line's pretty square. There are some shifts. Let's check one more time, maybe at 4 minutes, real quick. Check the line, square. Bear off, starboard tack. What's the number? Even. Okay, we're going to start in the middle. We don't know what's going to happen here. Let's start in the middle. So we do a port tack approach. It's blowing 10 knots. There's boats at the leeward end. There's clumps here and there. We come in. We find a spot. You always want to start as close to the weather boat as you can with a hole underneath. And somebody on the boat will say, we have to be able to hold our lane for 2 minutes before we're forced to tack. You know what I'm saying? So you start. So the strategy was middle right, based on the information we had, And now we implemented our tactics. We started in the middle. We want to sail for 2 minutes, at least 2 minutes, without being forced to tack by a lured boat or something else. So we start the race, and we're even. So how are we doing? We're even. Good. The boats off the boat end got off better than us because the wind seems to be in a right phase, but our numbers are saying even. A couple boats got off at the pin, but we're in the front row, but we have a guy to leeward of us who's bow even. So any shift to the left will be, it'll be tough. So the wind now is shifting slightly left. Okay, so we're coming down a little bit. We can't tack because even if we wanted to, we can't tack because there's boats to our right, starboard tack boats. Just kind of play along in your mind how we're doing this. And in the skipper's mind, he now wants to stay off the leeward boat because he's kind of coming down a little bit. So you're sailing, and you're always thinking about your strategy. Remember, guys, we did a lot of work before the race started. Middle right. Let's not be dictated by the boats around us of where we're going to end up this beat. In other words, if we're just waiting and hoping other boats do stuff, we're not sailing our own race. We're being dictated what we're going to do. Fair enough. Okay. We're down. In the absence of any other boats, we would tack because we are down 5. So the guy to weather, he might want to tack, but he's got a boat holding him up, so he can't tack. I asked my crew, can we tack? No, Juan's there. And Julio's not tacking. Oh, Julio tacked. Okay. The skipper is focused on going fast and staying off that leeward boat. Because if you slow down, the whole picture changes again. You need to keep going fast. Don't worry about the boats around you because as soon as you worry, you'll slow down. Fast. The skipper, fast. Juan's a good sailor. I think he's going to tack because Julio tacked. Juan tacked. Okay. We tack. Now you're in phase, going right. That was the plan. You sailed about 2 minutes longer on starboard than you would have if there was no boats. That puts you in the middle of the course. Your strategy was middle right. You're on port now, and you're up 5. And you are going to do whatever it takes not to get forced back. So here comes a starboard tack boat. You're up 5. It's a big duck. And you think, big picture, we're going to duck here. Oh, but we're going to bear way off and all this other. Big picture. Think about the big picture. Duck. Do a nice duck. Start early. You will lose less distance on that duck than if you tack back to starboard, down, going the wrong way. Maybe you say, hey, can I go through? And they say no. You duck. So I won't go through the whole beat, but so tactics, your strategy, the information you gathered for half an hour before the start always has to be your compass. And your tactics, every decision you make now, let's say at the end of the beat, you were in last place. At least you could feel good that you did your homework, you made a plan, and you followed through. It wasn't right, it didn't work out, but you feel good that you tried and you stuck to it. You made a plan, but it was not successful. Sometimes you make a plan and you do the opposite because it just happens. And the opposite really worked. You were going to go right, but you got forced left and you went all the way out. You tacked, you got lifted, and you win the race. In golf, they call that a good miss. Sometimes that happens. It happened to all of us that you go the wrong way, turns out to be good, and hey, I'll take it. But you had, yes?
Growing up, I'm the one who's in charge of the gym, but what I want to know is when do you trim? Under what circumstance do you want to pull it or let loose so my core goes faster?
That's a great question. I still feel negligent yesterday when I was talking about all the controls, and I forgot to mention the mainsail, which is the number one. And number two is the jib. And on the boat I sailed on yesterday, they saw a little bit of how much we changed the jib tension and the mainsail tension. A good rule of thumb would be two things. One, a little too loose, 1 inch too loose is much better than 1 inch too tight. It's always better to have your sails more eased than trimmed. So that's number one. Number two, and today will be a good day for it, I think, is whenever you are sitting on the side of the boat and it gets lighter and you sit in, ease 1 inch. Just do it. Just ease 1 inch. And when the puff comes and you sit back up on the side, trim 1 inch. And same with the main sheet. I was yesterday. I said, "Hey, can I borrow someone's gloves? I got to, I've got banker hands." But I wear gloves always because I rarely cleat the main sheet. I keep it in my hand. I wrap it twice, and I'm always 1 to 2 inches easing, trim, ease, trim, always. Same with the jib. And I think that it's so critical to. I mentioned yesterday, if you could see the wind, like if there was wind, if the wind was blue or green, exiting the leeches of your sails, you would see a lot of turbulence when the sails are too tight. And also, you would see, if they're too loose, they would be just streamlining back. And when the wind direction or velocity changes, if you don't change the sheet tension, then that's inefficient. There's a problem. Well, the wind velocity or your boat angle or wind angle is always changing. Like every minute, something's changing. So it just stands to reason if you're not adjusting it all the time, then you're going to be inefficient half the time. So I tell my kids all the time, you must be changing. If there's a puff and you don't ease, hike, and trim, if you just do one of them, if there's a puff and you hike, and you don't ease first and then trim back in, that's inefficient. Ease, hike, trim. I think there's a book called Ease, Hike, Trim. Yeah.
Good question. So when you let out main, what happens to the mast? It strains a bit.
Wait, start it up?
So when the puff hits, what you do with the main is you let out a little bit. What happens to the mast? Does it strain a little bit?
No, what happens is when you ease the main sheet, the only thing that's going to happen more than is, in essence, yes, it does straighten. What you see, though, is the forestay will slack a little bit, and you'll put shape into your jib. Yes, so yes.
It's more for the jib than
It's more for the jib. You're controlling, you're easing for your jib. Also, you're easing to create twist in the mainsail. You're twisting the top of your sail to create, it's like an airplane wing. When you're going perfect, smooth sailing, you want your airplane wing flat. But as soon as you need to generate speed again, you would put the flap down a little bit to generate flow over the airplane wing. Same thing on the on the main sheet, on the main sail.
You need the E-guards like front or back?
No.
The same place all the time?
Yes. I mean, well, I, even on my boat, I have what you have, the pins. I think that I might use 2 pins if it's very windy. If it's blowing 20 knots, 25 knots, I'll go 1 back. Otherwise, I keep it in the same spot, because the reason being is there's so many adjustments you can make to go faster. And if you have too many, if you change too many things, if you start tinkering with that, you're missing something that's probably more important. It's just not worth it. The sheet tension is more important than the. But we did see yesterday someone's jib car is too far forward, remember?
Yes, the girls. They have. The girls have problems with it doesn't work really good, so you go forward.
Any more questions? Well, if not, we're just going to go out to one boat. I just want to show you a couple things. I think it'll help with the rig tuning. And again, I know that the junior, where are the girls? Jeez. Yeah. Yeah. You know, rig tune is, your rig tune is really your lowers and the mast blocks. And you anytime you adjust your lowers, you would also change your mast block. When it gets windy, when it gets windier, the reason when you tighten the lowers, you put a block in front of the mast and tighten the lower. Because when you take a block out of here, let me just see here. These get looser, okay? So when you take a block out, you tighten the lower, mainly because, watch the forestay. See how it gets tighter? You tighten your lowers to tighten the backstay. The reason you do that, 2 things. You straighten the mast. You take pre-bend out, you straighten the mast. And your forestay tension is critical, because when it gets windy, if your forestay is not tight enough and you pull backstay on to get your forestay tight, if it's not tight enough, by the time your backstay's right, your forestay's still too loose, or it's tight enough, but your mainsail is washing out. You know, it's inverting. So it's critical to have the forestay tension right when it's windy. And you know it by, when I tuned the boat yesterday, you'll know it by being able to pull on backstay and not have your mainsail wash out, not have it invert.
Does that have to do also with the return of the jib coming straight to the main?
Yeah, well, yes. And when your forestays are tighter, it stretches out the leech to the luff to the leech. It makes it flatter, so the wind just exits and doesn't go into the back of the main. Yes.
David, if the mainsail starts inverting, that's what because you have too less tension in the short.
Well, it's inverting because if the mast is too much pre-bend and these are too loose, the mast that's why.
But if I already took the prevent out, so 1 block.
Yep.
And I didn't.
Oh yeah.
Tighten the shorts. The mainsail is going to start inverting.
It will, because you're pulling on backstay, but your forestay, you know, it's not getting tight. If you leave these loose, it'll be like that. If I tighten it, so that's why.
You can take off one of the prevent in the back.
Yeah, and put it in the front. Yeah.
How much you have to tighten the lowers extra. O sea, if you want to.
I would say if you took out one skinny block,
Okay.
you would put 2 turns on.
2 turns for each.
For
Anyone.
well, yeah, I mean they're all different.
Yeah, I know.
I go through. I go through from the lowest wind to the highest wind. I go through 6 full turns on the lowers. So 6 turns from 5 knots to 20 knots. 6 turns, and
20.
yeah.
Cuando sacas un bloque tienes que cazar.
Two tours for one.
For one block, yeah. But it's two turns, but I don't move 3 blocks for 6 turns. I'll sail at for in windy conditions, like in 20 knots, I'll sail with just under 1 inch of prebend, 7/8 inch of prebend, with 250 pounds on the lower. That's 6 turns. 250.
250, but without backstay.
Without backstay. So I tuned a bow yesterday, and this is what I did. With 7/8 of an inch of prebend, so just under 1 inch. Before anything, these were forestay was at 45, uppers at 250. That's the limit. 7/8 inch of prebend, 250 on the lowers. That's your heavy air setting. Then from there, your medium setting is maybe just a little over 1 inch of prebend, maybe 1 1/8 of prebend, and turn 3 off the lowers. So you were at 6, now you're at 3. Go sailing, and then just look up, make sure the mast is straight, and you want the lower just kind of breaking. Do you know what I mean by breaking? Just starting to dangle a little bit. If it's dangling too much and you're hiking, maybe put a turn on. If it's like this, take 1 more turn off. If you're sailing with 2 people sitting to leeward, in 5 knots, you go all the way down to 6 turns off.
1 turn is necessary to put to get 1 out of there.
No,
Minimum 2.
In very, very light conditions, in 0 to 5, I would sail with 1 1/4 of prebend, and I know the kids can't adjust it, but for everyone, and 6 down from the highest on here. That way, when you're out sailing and the conditions change, you're not like, You say, okay, we're down. We got to go down 3. You know where you are all the time. I'm down 3. I'm down 4. I'm up 2. You know, because you measured it. Does anyone have any questions on that? Yeah.
Get out of a club with a medium wind, for example, here in Salinas. What do you recommend for us? Because we go out, and we don't know if it's going to be 6 knots or 10 or 12 knots. So we go with mid-wind.
I would go.
We get a 0, going
Yeah.
down or going up.
When I come here next November, I would go out at 3, with 1 inch of prebend, 3,
1 inch and 3.
and 3,
No 1/8.
right in the middle.
Okay.
And then I get out there, we sail around, we see what it's like. It's going to be kind of 14 knots today, pretty breezy. I would stay at 1 inch, and then I might put a turn on, go to 2.
Okay.
1 being 6, being the strongest. And if we're out hiking, it's 14 knots, pretty windy.
Yeah.
And backstay's coming on.
Yes.
When you pull backstay on, these get loose because you're bending the mast. So you want to put that turn on because you need it. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I was going to just show you is how much I would put the board down because if you want to take a look. So on the center board, this is the sharp cutting edge. I call it the cutting edge right here. So I usually like to show maybe 6 inches of, I can't get it down all the way, of the board. So I would go down to where maybe here is there. 6 to 8 inches from here to here. Okay? If you're up too high and the boat rocks at all, or it's not propelling it forward. It's just kind of, so you need some board down. If you have too much board down, it's too much resistance. You don't need that. So I have, and Matt Fisher, he sails with it like this. He likes it real high. Maybe Jeff Litton too. They sail with it. I think if you're going to error on it, I would error it too high than too low. But anywhere, I do about 6 to 8 inches. Yesterday it was like 8 inches.
Another question, when you are in the downwind, most of the people goes with the boat. I saw you yesterday that you prefer to steer the boat from here.
Yeah.
And the boat goes sometimes
To weather.
to weather.
Yeah.
What would you recommend? Is better
Yeah.
to weather or is better to stay the boat flat?
Carlos is asking, and it's people have different preferences. Sailing the boat downwind, like in a laser, you sail the weather to get the sail up into the air. And you know, Al Terhune, who's very, very fast downwind, Alan doesn't sail like that. Alan sits to leeward, and he heels the boat to leeward, and he goes very fast. I think the difference is this. If you're going to sail the boat downwind, dead downwind, you want to heel it to weather. Like Greg Fisher always heels the boat to weather, and he goes downwind. If your technique is more like Alan Terhune, where he sails more angles, you want to sail more with leeward. So VMG sailing, like with an A sail, you would sail heel to leeward. If you want to go downwind, dead downwind, like in a laser, you want to sail it with weather heel. Yeah. Yesterday, for me, I do, if it's blowing if it's 6, 7, 8 knots light, I like to sail more the VMG. If it's windy enough where you could pull the pole back, then I sit up on the side and heel it over a little bit. Get the boom up in the air. And then the mainsail is so narrow at top, a lot of the sail's down low, so you want to get it up in the air.
What about the traveler height?
Well, the question is on the height of the Traveler. Usually mine's about 12 inches from the deck. But I've noticed on these boats, and it needs to be a little bit lower to get enough sheet tension. I don't know, you know, I sail in Allen, it might be this, these decks are a little bit more combed, have a little more rocker, so in other words, the distance has to be shorter. And yesterday that proved to be the case. That
Usually I had like 8 and you told me to put it down. I used 6 almost.
Yeah, so he's probably closer to 6 on this vintage of a Nichols. So you know, we said it a couple times on if you're two blocking, you know, two blocking, like if you're getting it all like that. Oh, just flick that around yeah. You know, if you're two blocking and that's perfect, then you need to pull the Traveler down, so you want it to be like that. So you have if you need to really trim hard, you still can. But you want it to be about like that to be normal sailing conditions. That way, like in light air or if it's flat water and you want to pinch somebody off, you want to trim in a little bit to head up. You know, but my boat, I would have it like that for normal sailing, just like that. And I saw yesterday people to get it right, they needed to be like that to have enough tension on the leech. So in that case, you need to lower the Traveler.
That means your boom is not going to be horizontal.
Yeah.
Normal sailing conditions.
Right.
Did you say that?
Yeah.
You don't want it. You don't want it horizontal. You want it a little bit.
Well, no, I mean, I think you do want it, but you know, every boat's a little different. I've noticed on these, you need to sheet it harder. I think it's because of the combing of the deck is higher, so the distance is less between the end of the boom and the deck. Just the way that there's a lot of rocker on them, so. Any other questions or no?
It helps to have a better bow. That's what you're saying. In when you're going against the wind.
What's that?
Point higher. Point higher, right?
What?
With your
Boom lower?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that it's just a function of because all of them are about the same. When we were looking at them, to me, it's more the style of the boat than anything else. Like if I had my boat here, there would be. I could have my Traveler higher and sheet in and.
Rule of thumb is a horizontal boom, right?
Yeah, I would say yeah. Rule of thumb, yeah.
But I understood from what you just said that as you bring it down, you're pointing higher. Can that happen?
It's possible. I don't know. I don't know.
What do you do with your, in heavy wind, what do you do with your alcohol? Do you ease a little bit?
Heavy wind?
Heavy wind. You just pull it up?
Really tight.
You don't ease it?
No. A downwind or upwind?
Upwind if you are working really hard with your backstay.
Yeah, no, I would make it as tight as possible. On my boat, I even put a line through here, through this hole. I put a line and tight it to get this even closer. And I put a safety on the clew in case it breaks. Because if your outhaul breaks when it's windy, you're toast. So I put a line around here to pull this tight to the mast, so I have something to pull against, not just pulling against this.
As a safety or as?
Well, you see how far back it sits? So if I take a line and tie it tight around the mast, then you have more room. Otherwise, what happens is you max out back there. The sail's built. As soon as the sail, and these sails are older, so they're stretching. So I would put a piece of Spectra through here around the mast. It doesn't get in the way of anything. Just go inside everything, really, really tight, even on a new sail. So this clew or the tack is tight right here. It's.
If you are working too hard with the backstay, do you think that it's enough power to maintain the sail like that shape because you are using the backstay?
Yeah, I
lower the power a little bit, easing a little bit of your.
Well, I think these sails, especially down low, are built so full that my experience has been you need to max this thing out tight and I use a ton of Cunningham. Like when it's windy, I've got this thing like that, really tight, because the draft just moves so far back and the sail is so deep that I think sailing at like 450 to 475 pounds is good, is nice crew weight. It's kind of light. So when it's windy, you really need to flatten out the sails. Otherwise, you're just, it's just really inefficient.
How do you work with the Cunningham with low wind?
Pardon?
Cunningham with low wind.
I pull some on because otherwise the sail, because there's so much shape, it's like a soup bowl. The wind gets trapped in there, and you want the wind to exit the leach. So I do put some Cunningham on even in light air, just to move the draft a little forward, and it's just a better. Yeah, exactly. Gotta pull this thing up.
Claro, mientras más sopla más plana, pero igual permite David, do you have a measure where you put, what's the name of that?
The jib, yeah, yeah. See this? So generally, you want that lined up. So if you, I took it off. Here, I'll put it on. I'll show you. Because this is a good angle. Here.
O se lo enseñé, mueve el bote.
So you want to put it so this is straight that. You just see. So if it was like that, it's hard to tell, but it angles, and.
But you have a measurement from here from your.
I don't. I just use that guide. The sailmaker does that. The sailmaker puts that on. So you want the best you can, just line. So this one was probably one too far back. Mattia, this side was probably too far forward.
One side, I think it's kind of broken and it goes forward.
Hey, David. I just moved this one on the side. But Cal, I know that there is a distance from the stem to here.
Okay, yeah.
I have it in the tuning guide.
Yeah, the tuning guide is it says the distance.
Yeah, it gives a distance.
Without the line.
But this is just.
No, it is in the tuning guide. You say the tuning guide, no tuning guide says.
Yeah.
Then you have to follow. I'm new. He didn't know.
Okay. Oh.
Pero no puedes tenerlo así.
When you're out sailing today, it's easier to when there's pressure.